Chris Kreski. He's the editorial director for MTV, and that's another fancy title that really means head writer, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's just a way of putting it on paper that actually sounds terrible to say, but it gets me a bigger bonus at the end of the year.
Well, good for you.
And an extra week of vacation, which I'm using this week.
Some people aren't going to believe that there is a writer for MTV. Some people think it's just kind of all tossed together.
It's a little of both. It is sort of all tossed together, but there's actually 6 of us. And we write everything that's not a video or a commercial.
Like what? Tell us what you do.
All the promos, all the image spots, all the tune-in spots, all the shows on the channel, the series on the channel, the weekends on the channel, the award shows on the channel, and on and on and on down the list.
Let's start with
a lot of work.
Let's start with the promos. I think the thing that stands out to me most about MTV is the crazy things they run in between the music videos.
Yeah, that's pretty much. A lot of people think that, and that is we take a lot of pride in not doing what looks like anything else. Strangely enough, one of the problems we have is that almost immediately when we'll do something goofy or different, it'll show up in, like, you'll see it in a pizza ad somewhere on CBS or on NBC or a lot of the bigger ad agencies tend to copy. If you notice, we did to give an example, we did a whole series of spots with a comedian named Dennis Leary. I don't know if you know who he is. They were black and white. He's sort of mean. He smokes and he rants and raves basically. Almost immediately, he was picked up by Wyden and Kennedy, which is sort of the new, trendy spot to get your ads done. And he's all over the channel. He does the spots with Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson. Anyway.
You got the guy who does the Burger King ads. He's an MTV guy.
He's an MTV guy, too. Yeah, he's from one of our series, MTV Sports. That's Dan Cortez.
Yeah, one of the things that MTV has really done, and I'm not saying I wholeheartedly endorse MTV, but they've certainly changed the way everybody else does things in television.
Oh, yeah. We have to constantly keep changing. In fact, starting, the 30th? In 2 days, the whole channel's going to look different again, because already our voiceover guy is doing beer ads, and the typeface we were using is showing up in standard commercial kind of stuff. So we're changing the channel a lot. It's going to look a lot. I hate to use this word, but it's going to look grungier, sort of dirtier and less polished than before.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
It's going to be kind of neat. In fact, you're going to see. I shouldn't tell you this because we're not supposed to tell, but I can tell you. You're going to see this whole the look of the typeface on the channel and the graphics and everything.
Yeah.
It's going to look like this whole sort of vaguely familiar letter style. It's basically one of those little tape things. You know those things where you twist the little dial and you type out labels for your stuff?
Yeah.
That's what it is. They just used that and they shot it under a camera and did.
They're just going to use just a cheapo label maker?
Yeah. We tried out all these different things, and we ended up using this 79-cent thing from a hardware store.
What do you guys do? Just sit around and think of the weirdest things you can possibly do?
Some of us do. Actually, I have a couple of people on staff who are sort of. It's funny. There's 6 of us. Two of them are sort of way out there and do sort of sit around thinking up the weirdest stuff they can do. I have one guy's a little straighter who does a lot of the tune-in stuff, and then there's 2 of us that do most of the funnier stuff. And one person I just make do everything else.
You worked on the TV series Remote Control, which is I thought it was great.
I missed that show. That was a lot of fun. I was head writer on that show.
Now that always had the look of just kind of being tossed together.
That basically was about right. It was a lot of work though. Because every question had to be funny. That was the basic idea.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting there and you're trying to think of questions about Bewitched and a way to make that funny at the same time, it's hard. I think that was one of the best things about it was that it looked so thrown together. But there was a lot of pre-production on that show. We went through, I think it was 309 episodes in about 18 months. They were all taped.
Wow.
So it was overwhelming at times. But it was really fun. It was like genuinely funny. It's funny you mentioned it because I just pulled a couple of tapes from it, which I hadn't seen in a while, and it was funnier than I remember.
Yeah, it is funny.
Yeah,
and you've also
that too. I mean, a lot of the people from that show have gone on to bigger and better things.
A lot of some of the things you've worked on are like the music video awards and the movie awards and things like that. Now you've got to have contact with a lot of big name stars. I would assume.
It's funny because you get 10 or 15 minutes with everybody.
Yeah.
Tell
us some star stories.
Oh God, there's one of my favorite ones. I've always sort of been this. I was anyway. This sort of giant Roy Orbison fan, and I was standing on like a balcony. We were at Mardi Gras. This is in 1988, doing a live weekend with, I think the hosts were Buster Poindexter and Tracy Ullman, I think. So I was standing on the balcony with them, going over what they were going to say and that kind of stuff. And I get tapped on the shoulder, and I turn around, and it's Roy Orbison standing behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Are you Chris?" First of all, he looked like he was about 75 years old. He looked like Larry Bud Melman. He really did, with black hair. But he said, "Are you Chris?" And I was like, I did like a Ralph Cramden.
Yeah.
And he said, "They told me to come find you." So he showed up unannounced and support
Wow.
him. But you do get to, with the award shows especially, you pretty much work with.
Have you worked with Michael Jackson?
Once, very briefly. He tends to be very secretive, and he keeps the crews as minimal as possible. But he was okay. I should probably not say a whole lot more.
Come on now, spit it out. You don't sound too
He's very guarded, and it's very hard to get close to him. And he is what he seems like.
You know, I met Michael Jackson once down at Disney World.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I took some students down there when I was teaching at a college in Florida. And Michael Jackson, of course, loves Disney World,
Right.
anything Disney. And so we just followed him around all day. Once we saw he was there, we decided to follow him around. And I thought he was kind of a nice guy because he did autograph our things for us and talk to us for a minute.
Uh-huh.
But he's very strange. I mean,
Yeah, he's a little bit. It takes him a while too. We did a thing where 30 people from around the world actually won dinner with him,
yeah.
and they were expecting him. He can surprise you on the nice side too, but they were expecting him to kind of show up and wave and sort of walk through the place and leave. He ended up spending like an hour at the, and we have all this footage. I'm allowed to say this. Okay, I'm going to tell you. We have all this footage of him, like, dancing with the prize winners and forming a conga line, and, like, it's amazing. You wouldn't believe it was him.
Let me tell you my quick weird Michael Jackson story. We were watching a bunch of cameras down at Disney World shooting him, and we thought there was a TV channel, like MTV or something, shooting him at Disney World. So we walked up to the guys shooting the cameras, and we said, well, do you work for MTV or a local TV station or what? And they said, no, we work for Michael Jackson. And we said, what? And they said, yeah, Michael likes to take film of himself meeting people. He likes to see the crowd reaction. He likes to see girls faint. So we take the film, we edit it, and then he plays it at home in his private theater to watch how the crowd reacts to him. Weird.
That is a running thing with him. If you notice any of the later things he's done, there's a lot of, like, fawning crowd reaction shots in it.
Our guest is Chris Kreski. He's the head writer for MTV, the Music Video Network. Chris, there's been criticisms of MTV. I'm sure you've heard these in the past, and I want you to kind of comment on them.
Sure.
First of all, your target audience. It seems like most of the people who are in your target audience are teenage males, and some of the material that you air isn't appropriate for teenage males.
Yeah, that goes back and forth. It's funny because the target audience isn't necessarily teenage males. It's sort of, I think, 14 to 39, male and female. Teenage males do make up a big batch of the audience, though, demographically. It's funny, though, too, we're finding lately that the top end of our demographics is rising. It used to be, 34, 30, 34. But there's a lot of, like, 40s and up now watching the channel, which is...
Well, I suppose as people get older now, they're just sticking with it.
There's more people that would be interested in it. I agree with you, though. I think some of the stuff is a little much. On the other hand, it's not. It's a tough call because you don't want to infringe upon what people do, and at the same time, you don't want to pander to the worst elements of either. There are some things we haven't shown. The Madonna sex thing we left on after midnight. I think basically because when we didn't play the one before it, Justify My Love, the criticism was pretty negative about us not playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people thought it should have been on it somewhere, sometime. A lot of the stuff that's really objectionable, you'll tend to find after 10 o'clock at night now. That's one. I think
people would be surprised to hear that MTV does censor what goes on.
Oh, yeah. No, there's a whole standards and practices department. It's funny because I have to deal with them all the time now. We're doing a new cartoon show with these two characters, Beavis and Butthead, their names are, who are sort of, they're like Wayne and Garth, but they're not that smart, if that's possible. And they're sort of mean as opposed to good-natured like Wayne and Garth are.
Yeah.
But it's kind of fun to write cartoons. But anyway, so every day now I'm going back and forth to the Standards and Practices Department, and I'm finding out that they really do keep track of everything.
Yeah.
In fact, they have all the lyric sheets for every song written down. And if you look through them, they go phonetically through the songs, and it's like you'll see whole pages of ooh ooh or like ooh yeah yeah baby, listed out. It's just funny to see it in print.
Other criticisms: too much violence on MTV.
Yeah, that's one thing we're starting to crack down more and more on. We are sending things back, actually. Sending videos back for editing if they are too violent. Especially some of the rap videos are.
Well, what about violent language?
That too. I mean, there are certain FCC guidelines that we have to adhere to. Aside from that, it becomes a very iffy question because you don't want to start censoring people on our end if they fit within the guidelines that we can air. Then
some of that rap stuff. I mean, let's face it. Some of rap is crap. There's no other way around it.
Yeah, but it's funny because it's like it's not really our place to make the aesthetic criticism as long as there's an audience.
Yeah, but what you're saying is if the audience likes it, you'll play it because the audience likes it. But the only way that they'll get to like it is if you play it in the first place.
Oh no, that's not actually true. I was amazed at how many records rap sells. So if they find it,
but just because it sells records, you don't have to put the video on just because it sells records, do you?
No, we don't have to. But I mean, it's not really like I said. It's not. I mean, if it's an aesthetic call, that's not our call to make.
Yeah.
If there is an audience for it, we really should give them an opportunity to see it, as long as it fits within the standard FCC guidelines of.
Another criticism is the female roles on MTV. Tends to be a lot of abuse. Women are always kind of put down. They're the ones who are abused. You very rarely see women in lead roles, in positive roles, and even in singing roles on MTV.
Yeah, it's funny. That's I kind of agree with that one, to be honest with you. But in terms of what we can do about it as a channel, it's a limited thing. I mean, because we don't make or have any creative control over the actual videos. They come to us. They're paid for by the record companies, and the bands and the directors come up with the concept and put it together. Once it comes to us, they consider it finished. If there's something really objectionable, we'll ask them to take it out. But that is something that I would tend to agree with. But it is also something that we're trying to steer away from. We're showing more and more videos based on their creative content, as opposed to the the band or whatever.
Yeah.
So you'll see things get on the channel just based on their creative content alone.
Okay.
That's basically to stir up some of that among the sort of niches in the music video society where that just sort of have the heavy metal band in the warehouse with the smoke and the babes in their underwear.
Chris, we have a call from Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Good morning, guys.
Hi.
Hey, Chris, I remember watching MTV when it first came on the air, and I was just curious, when did you really, maybe the writers or the editorial staff, make the decision to move away from music and more toward left-wing political activism?
It's funny. It's with the Choose or Lose stuff. You mean this year?
Yeah.
Well, that's just one example.
Yeah, it's they tried to keep it even-handed, but I have to agree with you. I thought it looked a little bit. You could certainly tell who we were rooting for anyway.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your honesty. I do
I know,
remember
I
I was in college
that.
when
The tape will come back and I'll get in trouble. But it's funny because I almost wonder. I mean, it was a very noble cause. We were trying. Basically, the underlying thing there was to get younger people to register.
Right. That's great.
But I almost have. This is also not going to sound like a wonderful thing to say, but I almost wonder if image-wise, it's not a bad idea for us to be responsible and sort of upstanding and stuff. I mean, it sort of runs contrary to everything rock and roll, anyway, put that in quotes, has always been. And I wonder if that's like a mixed message, as noble as it is.
Could be.
I seem to be one of the only people who thinks that. Everyone else seems to really love that.
Yeah.
So, and we're moving away from that. In the next year, you'll see that same sort of energy that we pushed for the election is going to go more into tolerance and sort of like everyone just getting along with everyone, which is, I think, a much more appropriate space for us to be than politics.
Well, I remember video killed the radio star. So.
Yeah, the first one. Me too, I remember that.
Bye.
Thanks, Bob.
That was the first video ever played on the channel.
Chris, do you think that MTV had a substantial role in Clinton's victory?
I know that the young people voting was up 15%. And substantial is a loose word, but yeah, I think it would fit. I do think the youth vote anyway, came out in greater numbers than it would have for him without the Choose or Lose stuff.
Well, then you realize that MTV has a lot of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Does that scare you?
Yeah.
Does it scare you as the head writer?
You know, it's a funny thing because it does. It's amazing what people will remember too, or bring up. It's like one of the things I was happiest with that I ever did at the channel was getting Pee Wee Herman to open last year's 1992 Video Music Awards.
Well, you did that.
That was my idea, yeah.
Well, I know that made all the press.
Yeah, but I felt like he had been given a little bit of a raw deal. And I was a huge fan anyway before the whole thing, so I kind of pushed it through, and we agonized over what he was going to say when he came out. Finally, that hit us like the day before. Yeah. But I'm sorry, in terms of influence, that's what I mean. That was when it really hit me. When the next day, everywhere that tape was playing all the time, every break on CNN, every local station had it. And every radio station was playing the audio from it. It was scary.
Now, people may be surprised to hear that you are married. You're the father of what, a 2.5-year-old?
2.5-year-old who's running around the house now. You may hear her in the background breaking things.
Do you let her watch MTV?
She did when she was a baby. She did. Amazingly enough, I guess because the pictures change and it's colorful and stuff. I mean, when she was like 6 months, she would sit and watch it. Now she doesn't have any time for it. She'd much rather watch, Sharon, Lois, and Brom on Nickelodeon.
Yeah. When she gets to be 10 or 12, will you let her watch it?
Yeah, now you got me. Yeah. I don't know. I would worry about it. I'd have to say.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear you say that because I think a lot of parents do worry.
Think about it anyway. Steer her away from.
What does your wife think of it?
It's funny because she's seen it from both ends. She knows the people that work there, and she knows the channel. I think it's not something. Oh, geez, I shouldn't say this. It's not something we have on a whole lot at the house. But she doesn't have a problem with it, I don't so much, as she just has not a whole lot of interest in it.
Yeah, but I've heard other rock stars say they would be hesitant to let their children watch MTV.
Yeah. It's funny because so many of them have kids now that they think that way. Even what's his name, Kurt Cobain has said things that he wasn't sure he'd let his kid watch.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
That's right. Chris Kreski is our guest. He's the head writer for MTV.